Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to A-Level Maths live lesson. Today's topic is expanding brackets. So hopefully something that you've seen a lot of at GCSE level. And today we're just going to do a little bit of a reminder and then go on to something that's really going to hopefully stretch you in your ability to do expanding brackets. So just the basic principle is that when we have a question like this, 6 times and then the brackets 7 plus 3, we could do the brackets first. 7 plus 3 makes 10. And then I could do the 6 times the 10, and then that makes 60. That is one way of doing it, but there's another way of doing it, which is that I could do the 6 times and apply that to everything in the brackets. So I could do the 7 times the 6 times the 7, and then I could look at the 3 and say, well, let me times that by 6 as well. So I'm splitting it up to do the 6 times one by one. So I'm taking everything in the brackets one by one and using the 6 times that's at the beginning and timesing by those things in the bracket. So I could do 6 times 7, that's 42, 6 times 3 is 18, add them together makes 60. So it's a longer way. So why do we do it the longer way when it was much easier to do the brackets first? The reason is because sometimes we don't know what's in the brackets to be able to work it out. So we could have something like 6 times and then 7 plus maybe y, a number that we don't know. So if I don't know what y is, then I can't add it to 7. So what's the next best thing we could do? Well, we can try to write the same question but in an easier way to look at. So the brackets are getting in the way, so I could just do the method before, take the 6, times it by everything I've got inside the bracket. So I've got 6 times 7, that makes 42. And then I can do the same 6 but timesing by the y, and that's 6y. And that way at least I get something that I can now carry on and work with rather than have the brackets there. And the principle is you just take what's at the beginning and times it by everything on the inside. To get onto harder questions, you have to be able to deal with a minus. So let's put a couple of minuses in. So minus 3 times, and we just don't write the times sign, but it is there, plus 2r. Let's go with minus 3h. So now we've got the minus at the beginning is minus 3. It's still minus 3 times. So let's just do it one bit at a time. The minus 3 times 4, minus 12. The next one is minus 3 that was there at the beginning, is there at the beginning, times 2r. So that's minus 6r. And then finally the minus 3, but this time I'm timesing by minus 3h. So 2 minuses will make a plus, and it's 9h. And what if we've got powers? Well, you're going to have to remember your rules of powers. So x times x is easy. That's x squared. It's just a shorter way of writing the same number times by itself twice. That's x squared. Similarly, x times x times x would be x cubed. But what about putting some powers on the first one? Let's go with, let's say that's x to the power 5, and let's say this is x to the power 7. How do we handle it now? So I've got x times x times x itself 5 times another x times x times x 7 times. So altogether, if you were to visualize them, you'd have x being times by itself 12 times. So you could either do that mentally, try to visualize it, but a quicker way, as long as it's a times in the middle, we can just add the powers. 5 add the 7 makes 12. What if it was a division? Let's say I had x to the power 5 divided by x to the power 2, x squared. You could probably guess this, that if I have a times in the middle and I add the powers, then if I have a divide now, I'm going to maybe subtract the powers, but let's just see why we subtract the powers. The x to the power 5 can be written as x times x times x times x times x, 5 times. And then the x squared on the bottom, that's going to be x times x twice. And when you're dividing, the principle you got to remember is that any number divided by itself is always going to give you 1. 7 divided by 7 is 1. X divided by x is going to give you 1. Because it's the same number divided by itself. It's always going to give you 1. So if you have got an x on the top divided by an x on the bottom, well, that's the same number. I can just think that's going to become 1. Another x divided by itself, that's going to become 1. So all I'm left with is 1 on the bottom. 1 times 1 is 1, so you don't even bother needing to write too many 1s. 1 is fine. X times those two just become 1, and timesing by 1 doesn't really make any difference, so I don't even bother writing it. I've got x times x times x 3 times only now. Instead of the 5 that were there at the beginning, the 2 at the bottom it's called cancelling out. They've cancelled them out. So all I'm left with is the 5, subtract the 2, and that's x to the power 3. Let's try powers and negatives. Let's go with, let's say 4 x to the power 3 times x to the power minus 2. Okay, well 4 times, and there's an invisible 1 here, 4 times 1 is 4. Then I've got x to the power 3 times x to the power minus 2. What I'm really doing here is I'm just rearranging the order. 1 times 2 times 3 can be done in any order. So multiplication can be done in any order. So here I've got 4 times x times x times x times 1 times, and then this is x to the minus 2, which is really a divide. But if you ignore that for now, the thing is, with timesing you can do it in any order. So I'm going to do 4 times the 1 makes the 4, and then x cubed times the x to the power minus 2 times, what do I do to the powers again? I add them. So 3, add the minus 2, that'll give me a power of just 1. So 4x to the power 1. Let's try minus 5x to the power 7 times 3x to the power 2. Okay, just looking at the minus 5 and the times 3, that's minus 5 times 3 is minus 15. And then the x to the power 7 times the x to the power 2, the powers get added, and that's x to the power 9. Hopefully stuff that's easy to you, and you've done it at GCSE, but that was just a reminder so that you don't get stuck on some of the examples we're about to work through. So let's go with the first one. Okay, it's a little bit blurry. Let's see if I can just expand that picture quality a little bit better. Okay, we're gonna get rid of the word expand. That means we're gonna be timesing everything in the brackets by what's at the beginning of the brackets. So let's do this one at a time, and let's literally expand it. Let's just make it nicer and easier to read. So I'm going to take the 3xy and I have to times it by x squared. Okay, well, the only thing that really gets times and changes is the x and the x squared, because x has a power of 1 and x squared has a power of 2, so I'll get x becoming x cubed when I combine the x and the x squared. And what about the rest of it? Well, it's just as you see it. So I've got 3x cubed y as my first part. Let me just explain how that happens in slow motion, just in case you're just a little bit confused how I can do that. I've got 3xy times x squared. So if I was to write that out, I'd have 3 times x times y from the 3xy, that's what it really means, timesing by x squared. I can leave x squared as x squared. And when you're timesing, you can do it in any order. So I can do the 3 times the x times the y in any order. So what I'll do is, let's put the x's right next to each other so that they can be combined. So I've got the order just changed, so it's just slightly easier to work with. I can spot that I've got x squared times x. Well, that makes x to the power 3, so I can get rid of the 2 of them and combine them into 1, which is just x cubed. And then normally in algebra, if you've got different letters, you put them in alphabetical order. So really the times y and the times x, it's nicer to read it in alphabetical order, which is x and then y. And then in algebra we drop the times signs, so we can get rid of the times signs, even though they're still there mentally, we just don't bother writing them. So that's how the first one became 3x cubed y. That's in slow motion, but you don't have to write all of that. It's just so that you can see it once, and after that you just write the answer. So 3x cubed y. Okay, now on to the next term, which is 3xy times the 2x. Both of them are positive, so I know my answer is going to be positive. I'm going to do this in the order of 3 times the 2 times the x times the x times the y. So 3 times 2 makes 6. The x times x makes x squared times the y, and I just don't write the times sign. And then finally, I'm on to 3xy at the beginning times the minus 8. So with the minus 8, I'm going to have 3 times the minus 8, that's minus 24, times the x times the y, which I just write without the time signs as xy. Okay, hopefully not too complicated. Hopefully you followed all of that. And then the last example for today. I've got 2y squared plus 3x in the brackets, and I've got a 2 on the outside of the bracket. So all you have to remember here is that the 2 on the outside, it means I've got the bracket twice. So I can rewrite this as the full question is 2y squared plus 3x times another 2y squared plus 3x. That's really what the power of 2 is really saying, that this bracket's coming twice. I can forget all about the first one and now just look at the question as it is. And here what you're doing is you're just going to cover up so that you're not seeing too much in one go, otherwise it becomes a bit confusing. So let's make a little cover. And you just want to cover up one of the two things, or even three things, but just leave one thing exposed. So in the first bracket, let's just leave the 2y squared exposed and just concentrate on timesing everything you see by that 2y squared. So 2y squared times 2y squared, that's nice and easy, that's 4y to the power 4. And then sticking with the 2y squared, what else do we see? We see the 3x. So again, times that, 2 times the 3 makes 6, times the x times the y squared. That's just xy squared. Have a look, is there anything else I can times by the 2y squared? No, nothing at all. So now you can move over to what the red was covering, and I'm just going to have to cheat a little bit because I can't undo on this. And just remember what it was covering. It was covering the 3x. So let's now concentrate on the 3x, which means I want to focus just on the 3x, cover up the other thing, pretend it wasn't there. I've got 3x times the 2y squared to begin with. That's going to be 6xy squared. And finally, I've got the 3x times the 3x, which is 9x squared. Out of the four things you can see in front of you, you can hopefully simplify one or two of them. The 6xy squared can be joined with the other 6xy squared. So my final answer would be 4y to the power 4. I'll put the power 4 in a second. Plus the 6xy squared plus 6xy squared. That can be simplified to 12xy squared. And then the 9x squared can be added on at the end. Let's put those powers in before I forget. 4y to the power 4, 12xy squared, plus 9x squared. Okay. That's today's lesson, expanding brackets. Just a gentle introduction, a reminder of what you did at GCSE, and then next time we'll take that knowledge and try and look at really stretching you. We've got double brackets with quite a few things inside each, and then triple brackets is something that you'll use quite a lot at A level, so you want to really get your head around that. Thanks for joining me today. See you next time, inshallah, if God wills, at 9 PM on Monday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you and the blessings of God.